So let me turn to something related, but slightly different, which is the issue of Iran in the Middle East. Iran has been significantly weakened by both the attack or the Israeli counterattack against Hamas, the events in Lebanon, and the collapse of Assad's regime in Syria. Where do you see the Trump administration and Israel heading in their relations with Iran? Do you think an attack on Iranian nuclear facilities is a possibility over the next 6 months or so?
Look, as an analyst rather than advocate, I do think that an attack on Iran is now more likely than it's ever been before. Because if we have to assign a Trump doctrine, it's that allies should take matters into their own hands rather than relying on the United States to do their dirty work. At the same time, what the Israelis want is a green light. They want the United States not to interfere. And at the same time, and this is where it gets iffy, the Israelis also want the munitions that would be necessary to conduct these strikes. Now, during the Biden administration, when October 7th, 2023 happened, the United States sent some carrier strike groups to the Eastern Mediterranean. And the talking points, the spin at the time was it's to protect Israel. I don't believe that. Because if the United States, for example, wanted to infiltrate special forces into the Gaza Strip to take care of our hostages, the easier way to do that would be to fly them domestic into Ben Gurion Airport, Israel's a friend, and just have them infiltrate with everyone else. What I was afraid of is that those carriers were there to prevent Israel from any unilateral action against Iran. And it's not like the United States would actually confront Israel militarily. That's not the issue. Rather, if Israel scrambled its forces and you had the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower off the coast in the Mediterranean, if they just talked on the open radio about it, the Turks would pick it up, Hezbollah would pick it up, and pretty soon the Iranians would know an attack was coming. Now, Israeli pilots aren't suicidal. They might go in with surprise, but once they drop their ordnance, they're not going to fly out with surprise. The retired Air Force General Chuck Wald, who led the U.S. air campaign in Afghanistan, had calculated on the back of a napkin that Israel would need at least 1,600 sorties to take care of the Iranian nuclear program. And the logic to his calculation was, look, Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq. And when the Israelis went in and took out the Osirak plant in 1981, it was a one-off attack because there was a single plant. Because Iran is so far away and there's so many targets, before the Israeli pilots are going to attack the targets, they need to take out anti-aircraft batteries, command and control, enemy airfields, and so forth. And that's where you get to 1,300, 1,600 sorties. So the question is whether the United States is going to stand aside. Now, as you know, Jacob, I used to teach for the U.S. Navy. And whenever I would ask an admiral on a carrier strike group, what posture should the United States Navy take if we want the Iranians to take us seriously? The answer was the same. Station our aircraft carriers 400 miles off the coast of Iran in the northern Indian Ocean. Get them the heck out of the Persian Gulf. The reason for that is the Persian Gulf is very narrow and very shallow. It's actually much more shallow than even Lake Michigan is. But if we're 400 miles off in the northern Indian Ocean, we can theoretically strike at Iran. Iran can't strike back at us because their drones, their small boats, their sea mines, they're not going to do any good there. So what I would look at as an analyst is where our aircraft carriers are. If we exit the Persian Gulf, I actually think that's much more likely that something is going to occur. And when it comes to Israel's attack, the last factor I would say is, remember, the Israeli Navy drives more German submarines than the German Navy does.
Right, which many people forget. Those are very interesting factoids for anyone who's watching this podcast. As a final question, Michael, there's a lot of talk that the Trump administration would like to expand one of his signal successes in his first administration, namely the Abraham Accords. How likely do you think that is? What role will Saudi Arabia play? Give us your estimate of the situation.
Look, I think it is likely, but I believe that the reticence in Saudi Arabia actually has nothing to do with Trump or their desire to join the Abraham Accords. We often talk about Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince. But have you ever stepped back to think, why aren't we talking about the king, King Salman? And the reason is because the king of Saudi Arabia has either advanced Alzheimer's or advanced dementia. And so the danger is, because it's an absolute monarchy, that if Mohammed bin Salman signs off on the Abraham Accords, someone could get to the king, and with his last degree of consciousness, the king could say, I mean, if that consciousness is anti Israel, can you believe what your son did? And here's a piece of paper, let's change the crown prince. That would be the nightmare scenario. We can embrace MBS as a reformer, but there's always a danger when we put all our eggs in an individual rather than in a system. And so I think what we're going to have to do is wait for Mohammed bin Salman to actually become king of Saudi Arabia before he's willing to risk this, lest someone else knock him out. And if you recall, 25 years ago, something similar happened for a different reason with regard to the leadership in Jordan. When King Hussein of Jordan was dying, at the very last minute, he flew back to Amman to knock out Crown Prince Hassan and put in Abdullah II in his place. So when you're dealing with absolute monarchies, it's different than dealing with democracies. The court politics can be very, very different, but we need to be conscious of them. We can't just project our own political system and good wishes onto our partners.
Michael, that was absolutely fascinating. Thank you for sharing a bunch of insights that I was not aware of, and I know you have a plane to catch.
Thank you so much, Jacob.